We're now chatting with Chris Emerson, Senior Vice President Marketing at Airbus. Chris, thank you for visiting with me this morning. A couple of questions that we'd like to go through here. There's some talk in the industry about, certainly the narrow body market, about a bubble. And obviously in your side of the business, there's no bubble. But I'd like to hear from Airbus, what is the view on the argument that there is no bubble?
Well, the view that we take is a simple one. We look globally. You have 7 billion people living on the earth today. Roughly about half of that have accessed air travel. The other half are still traveling either via bus, train, boat, or they don't travel at all. But we do know that over the next half decade, 2 decades, the propensity, so the demand and the accessibility of this other half of the world's population to air traffic will happen. Now the question is when, what are the constraints between today and when they do end up traveling? And you have a lot of business models today. When you look at the likes of Cebu Pacific or Philippine Airlines or AirAsia X, that their specific objective for the airline is how can I convert an existing traveler who would take a bus or a train or boat into air travel. That is their objective. You look at what are the criteria, what would enable this traffic to grow even quicker. When you look at all of this demand and you say, okay, where are we today? How is the supply side looking? Today, if you wanted to have a new single aisle, you're going to have to wait half a decade almost to get it. And so because of the supply side constraints, you need to place some orders today to be ready for whenever this growth is going to happen. So I don't really see it as a bubble. I see it more as constraints on getting the capacity when you need it, and you'll need to place the orders soon.
So I think it's interesting the example you used in Mexico and in Brazil. The carriers there were quite successful in pulling people out of buses, not airplanes. So there's an example. I can see that looking forward. And what I find interesting now is you're saying really what an airline needs to do is, because of the production limitations, even with increased production at Boeing and Airbus, you have to put in your order now, because 10 years from now, when the traffic will be there, you need to have equipment ready.
Absolutely.
So it's a bit of a feeding frenzy that you're creating.
You don't want to miss the wave, for sure. You don't want to miss the wave, because what you will do is frustrate the demand. Because if the demand does arrive, you have people who want to travel, but then they can't travel. They can't travel at the right time, at the right price, because the capacity isn't there. You're going to frustrate the demand, and that's going to be worse than what you've tried to build up, which is converting these passengers from conventional modes of transportation to air traffic.
Okay, let's go to the complete other end of the spectrum. United Nations put out something very interesting on urbanization, and The Economist had a great story about the effect of this urbanization is adding 6 Sao Paulos to the world every year for 30 years. I thought that was a phenomenal word picture. Obviously, your competitor talks very strongly about the fact that the VLA market, and in fact in their latest forecast, the VLA size of the market they've reduced considerably. Obviously, with the 380 and pushing the 380, you have a very different view of the impact of urbanization and the impact on slots, right?
Absolutely. It's not just about numbers of people living in cities. That's a very generic way of looking at this marketplace. Actually, when you look at these very high dense populations, you have to look at what are the preferences of the people living in the cities. And what we've seen, and this is a trend that's happened over the last half decade, what we see actually happening is passengers are becoming picky. They know what they want. They might have a budget for how much they're willing to pay to go from a destination A to B. And now it's up to the airlines to have a product to offer to them. So what I'm talking about is product segmentation. When you look at these highly dense cities, today and in the future, it's not just about 500 passengers on one schedule. It's about people who want to travel economy, maybe the lowest economy fare, people who want to travel premium economy. They want a little more comfort, people with business, people in first class, and etc. So you start thinking about the product segmentation or the cabin segmentation. When you think about this, and you take a traditional single-deck airplane today, and you put 4 cabin classes into this aircraft, you might be able to carry 230, 240 passengers in one schedule. You compound that then with the traffic growth and the population density, you can't have enough frequencies to compensate for that then. Whereas when you take a VLA, you can have 4 classes on the cabin and still carry 500 plus passengers in one schedule. So it's the question is, taking the right passengers at the right time will satisfy the need, so the passenger side. From an airline perspective, it's actually all about revenue. Because if you meet the passenger demand, what they want, the cabin product that they would like to pay for, you maximize the revenue potential. And you know that in any day, you have varying fares depending on when you want to leave, where you want to go. What we're saying is, concentrate the highest paying passengers, because they are there. There is a peak time when passengers want to travel. Concentrate them and give them the right product, and that's the A380.
So the poster child for deploying the 380 in all kinds of conditions is Emirates. Are they following this kind of thinking?
Absolutely. If you go and look at Emirates, they take a product segmentation approach across their entire fleet. So I won't go into that. It's best to ask them on it. But if you specifically look at their 380s, that's why they offer an economy class cabin with 19-inch wide seats at 10 abreast. So they have a segmentation where they say, if you fly on the 380, you're flying on a premium economy product. And then, of course, they offer business and first.
So I'm thinking about the 380 generally in terms of its capacity. There's some talk about the fact that the airline, and let's talk about Korean here, I guess, as the poster child for that, very underutilized amount of real estate on an airplane like a 380. Why is it that the airlines are so under-seating, if you like, the airplane?
I won't speak specific to Korean Air because it's best to talk to them, but I'll talk about the general period of when the 380 was introduced. You'll recall that the first A380 entered service 1 year before the financial crisis. And then the majority of the operators received their 380 during the financial crisis. Clearly, seat capacity was being taken out of the marketplace. If you're contracting ASKs, you don't think about how do I introduce an A380 with 500 plus seats on it. So we had a phenomenon during the introduction of 380 where a lot of the operators actually came back to the cabin and said, no, let's reevaluate the cabin. I want to have less seats because I was worried about how to fill them. So let me reduce the seat count, drive up the premium count on the seat count to compensate for that. So that's why you see in some cases lower seat count. Now the trend has clearly been over the last half decade to increase seat count or increase the segmentation of the aircraft. So you've had now 3 operators introducing premium economy, so upgrading their cabin to include a 4th class premium economy. And when we look at all the layouts that we are drawing for competition today, they're all in the 550 plus seat count in a 4-class configuration.
So we can expect to see more seats on the 380s going forward?
You can expect to see more of the right seats going forward.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.